David pushed the worn stroller through the city park, his 7-year-old daughter Lily skipping beside him. She wouldn't stop talking about her school play, where she'd gotten the role of a dancing sunflower. David smiled and nodded, though his mind was somewhere else entirely. He was calculating numbers again. Rent was due in 5 days, and after buying Lily's new shoes last week, his bank account looked pretty sad. "Daddy, are you listening?" Lily tugged at his jacket sleeve. "Of course, sweetheart. You're the best sunflower in the whole school," he said, ruffling her hair. It had been 2 years since his wife Rachel passed away. Cancer took her fast, and David was still figuring out how to be both mom and dad to Lily. His warehouse supervisor job paid the bills. Barely, but it gave him enough flexibility to pick Lily up from school and be there when she needed him. That was worth more than money, he told himself every time his bank account made him nervous. The morning air was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet. David loved these Saturday morning walks. They were free, and Lily enjoyed feeding the ducks at the pond. Simple pleasures. That's what their life had become, and honestly, David was okay with that. They were passing by the big decorative fountain near the park entrance when David noticed something odd. A teenage girl was stumbling near the water's edge. She couldn't have been more than 16 or 17. Her clothes screamed money. Designer everything, jewelry that probably cost more than David's car. But something was very wrong with her. The girl's eyes were unfocused, rolling back. Her steps were unsteady, like she was walking on a boat in rough water. David's military training from years ago kicked in. He'd seen this before. "Lily, stay right here," he said firmly, but the words barely left his mouth before the girl's legs gave out. She fell toward the fountain's stone border, and David knew exactly what would happen if her head hit that concrete. He didn't think. He just moved. His legs pumped hard, and he reached her just in time, his arms catching her limp body before impact. The girl was dead weight, completely unconscious now. David struggled to hold her up, his warehouse-strong arms straining. "Dad, stay safe." Lily's scream pierced through everything. His little girl sounded terrified. David lowered the girl carefully to the ground, his heart pounding. People were starting to gather around, pulling out phones. Some were recording, others just staring. Nobody was helping. "Someone call 911. David shouted. He checked the girl's pulse. It was there, but weak and slow, too slow. Her breathing was shallow, barely noticeable. David's military first aid training flooded back. This was an overdose, he was almost certain. He'd seen soldiers overseas take bad stuff and look exactly like this. A middle-aged woman stepped forward. "I've called an ambulance." "They're coming." David tilted the girl's head back, checking her airway. She wasn't breathing right. He couldn't wait for the ambulance. He started rescue breathing, counting in his head, staying focused. Behind him, he could hear Lily crying. This girl was somebody's daughter, somebody's whole world. Just like Lily was his, the minutes felt like hours. David kept working, kept breathing for this stranger, kept checking her pulse. His arms ached. His knees hurt from kneeling on the hard ground. But he didn't stop. Finally, sirens. The most beautiful sound David had ever heard. Paramedics rushed over with their equipment, and David explained everything as fast as he could. What he saw, what he did, how long she'd been unconscious. They worked quickly, professionally, loading the girl onto a stretcher. "You probably saved her life," one paramedic said to David. "Good work." "Is she going to be okay?" David asked. "We're taking her to Memorial Hospital. You should come with us. Police will want a statement." David looked back at Lily, who was now being comforted by an elderly woman with kind eyes. The woman nodded at him. "I'll stay with your daughter until you get back," she said. "I'm Helen. I live right across from the park. Your little one will be safe with me." David hesitated. Trust a stranger with Lily? But what choice did he have? "Lily, baby, I need you to be brave. Stay with this nice lady, okay? I'll be back soon. I promise." Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You promise, Daddy?" "I promise." The ambulance ride was a blur. David sat in the back, watching the paramedics work on the girl. They got an IV in, gave her something, monitored her vital signs. The machine beeping was the only sound besides the siren. At the hospital, everything moved fast. The girl was rushed into the emergency room, and David was left standing in the waiting area, suddenly aware that his shirt was dirty and his hands were shaking. A police officer appeared, young guy with a notebook. David gave his statement, where he was, what he saw, what he did. The officer thanked him and said he might need to follow up later. David was about to leave, desperate to get back to Lily, when the emergency room doors burst open. A man in an expensive suit rushed in, followed by two people who were clearly security. The man's hair was messy, his tie loose, his face pale with panic. He went straight to the reception desk. "My daughter, Sophia Montgomery. The ambulance just brought her in." The nurse made a call, spoke quietly, then directed the man to a private waiting area. As he turned, his eyes landed on David. "You," the man said, walking straight toward him. "You're the one who found her. The paramedics told me. You saved my daughter's life." Up close, David recognized him. Richard Montgomery, the tech billionaire. His face was on business magazines, news websites. He'd built one of the biggest tech companies in the country. "I just did what anyone would do," David said uncomfortably. "No." Richard's voice cracked. "No, most people would have recorded it on their phones. You acted. You saved her." He grabbed David's hand, shaking it with both of his. "Thank you. Thank you so much. How is she?" David asked. "They're working on her now. Overdose, they think." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "My baby girl. I didn't even know she was using. I didn't know anything." David felt the man's pain. It was raw, real. The kind that cuts through all the money and success and strips you down to just being a scared parent. "She's young," David said. "She can come back from this. Kids are stronger than we think." Richard nodded, but he looked lost. A doctor appeared and called him back. Before he left, Richard pulled out his wallet and grabbed a business card. "Please, your name and number. I want to thank you properly when my head is clear." David almost refused, but something made him take the card and write down his information. Maybe it was the look in Richard's eyes. The same look David had probably worn when Rachel was dying. The look of a parent who'd do anything to save their child. "I hope she's okay," David said. He left the hospital and caught a taxi back to the park, spending money he didn't have. Helen was waiting on a bench with Lily, who ran into his arms the second she saw him. "Daddy." "I'm here, baby." "I'm here," Helen smiled. She was very brave. "We fed the ducks together." David thanked her about 100 times. When they finally walked home, Lily held his hand tight. "Is that girl going to be okay?" she asked. "I think so. I hope so." "You were really brave, Daddy." "No, sweetheart. You were brave. I'm sorry I scared you." That night, after Lily fell asleep, David sat in his small living room and stared at Richard Montgomery's business card. He thought about the girl, about how close she'd come to dying, about how different their worlds were. He had no idea that this morning in the park would change everything. That the simple act of helping someone in need would somehow transform 3 lives forever. All David knew was that he was tired. His daughter was safe and somewhere across the city. Another father was sitting by his daughter's hospital bed, probably praying the same prayers David had prayed 2 years ago when Rachel was slipping away. Tomorrow he'd go back to his regular life. Back to the warehouse, back to counting pennies, back to being just David, the single dad doing his best. Or so he thought. 3 days passed, and David tried to forget about the whole thing. He went back to work at the warehouse, moving boxes and managing inventory like always. But people had seen the news. Local reporters had covered the story, calling him a hero. His co-workers gave him knowing looks and pats on the back that made him uncomfortable. "Hey, hero," his buddy Tom called out during lunch break. "When you gonna use that billionaire connection to get out of this place?" David frowned. "It's not like that." "Sure it is. Rich guy's daughter. You saved her. He owes you big time." "I didn't do it for a reward," David said, his voice harder than he intended. But Tom's words stuck with him. The truth was, David had thought about it. Not about asking for money, nothing like that. But he wondered if maybe, just maybe, something good might come from this. Not for him, but for Lily. A college fund, perhaps, or some connection that might help her future. Then the call came. David was unloading a shipment when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello, is this David Chen?" A woman's voice, professional and polite. "Yeah, speaking. My name is Patricia. I'm calling on behalf of Richard Montgomery. He would very much like to meet with you to express his gratitude. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon?" David's first instinct was to say no. He didn't need gratitude. He didn't want to be paraded around like some charity case. But curiosity won. Where and when? Patricia gave him an address downtown. Montgomery Technologies headquarters. 2:00 the next day, that evening. David told Lily about the meeting. She was doing homework at their small kitchen table, tongue sticking out as she concentrated on her math problems. "The rich man wants to say thank you?" she asked. "Looks like it. That's nice. Maybe he'll give you a reward like in the fairy tales." David smiled. "Life isn't a fairy tale, sweetheart. But it's nice of him to want to meet." The next day, David called in a personal day at work. He put on his only good shirt and the dress pants he wore to Rachel's funeral. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, he barely recognized himself. When did he start looking so tired? The taxi ride downtown made him nervous. Montgomery Technologies was in one of those gleaming glass towers that seemed to touch the sky. David had never been in a building like this. The lobby alone was bigger than his apartment. Patricia met him at reception, a woman in her 40s with a warm smile. She led him to an elevator that needed a special key card to access the top floors. "Mr. Montgomery is looking forward to meeting you," she said. The elevator opened into an office that looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city. The furniture probably cost more than David made in a year, and there, standing by the window, was Richard Montgomery. He looked better than he had at the hospital, put together, but his eyes still carried that same haunted look. "David." Richard crossed the room and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." They sat in leather chairs that were almost too comfortable. Patricia brought coffee in actual china cups. "How's your daughter?" David asked. "She's alive because of you." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. "She's home now, in rehab counseling. It's going to be a long road, but she's here. She's breathing. That's everything. I'm glad." Richard leaned forward. "I need to be honest with you, David. I didn't ask you here just to say thank you. I mean, I am thanking you, but I have something else in mind." David tensed. Here it comes. The big donation he'd have to refuse because his pride wouldn't let him take money. "I want to offer you a job." That wasn't what David expected. "A job?" "Head of security operations for Montgomery Technologies. You'd be managing our entire security department. Physical security, digital safety protocols, emergency response, everything." David almost laughed. "Mr. Montgomery, I appreciate the thought, but I'm a warehouse supervisor. I don't know anything about corporate security. You were in the military. Army, right?" "2 tours overseas." David blinked. "How did you—" "I had my people do some research. I hope that doesn't offend you, but I needed to know who saved my daughter. You have military training, leadership experience, and something my current security team lacks." "What's that?" "The ability to actually act when it matters. To make the hard call under pressure. To see a crisis and run toward it instead of away." Richard pulled out a folder. "This is the offer. Salary, benefits, everything. Look it over." David opened the folder and nearly dropped it. The salary number had too many zeros. It was 10 times what he made now. Maybe more. "This can't be real," David said. "It's real. Full health insurance for you and your daughter. Dental, vision, company car. And a college fund for Lily, fully funded through graduation." David's hands shook. This was life-changing money. This was never worrying about rent again money. This was Lily getting everything she deserved money. "I can't accept this," he heard himself say. Richard looked puzzled. "Why not?" "Because it feels like charity. Like you're paying me for saving your daughter." "I didn't do that for money." "I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm offering you this job." "David, I've spent weeks since the incident thinking about what happened in that park. My daughter was dying and I wasn't there. I was in a board meeting." "A board meeting?" Richard's voice broke. "I've been so busy building this company, making money, that I forgot what actually matters. I forgot to be a father." David said nothing, just listened. When the call came, when they told me Sophia was in the hospital, my whole world stopped. Nothing mattered. Not the company, not the stock price, not the deals. Just her. And you, a stranger, you understood that immediately. You didn't think about it. You just saved my daughter. Any parent would have done the same. But you're not just any parent, are you? You're raising your daughter alone. You work hard, you make sacrifices. You actually show up. That's what I need. For a security job? For more than that." Richard stood and walked to the window. "I need to change, David. I need to be a better father. But I can't do it alone. Sophia needs structure, needs people around her who genuinely care. Not paid therapists and nannies. Real people. And this company, it needs someone who understands that people matter more than procedures." David was quiet for a long moment. "I need to think about it. Talk to my daughter." "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, David sat with Lily after dinner. He explained everything in simple terms. A new job, more money, better opportunities. Would we have to move? Lily asked, worried. No, sweetheart. We could even move to a better place if you want. Maybe a house with a yard. Lily's eyes got big. Really? With my own room? Yeah, with your own room. What about your friends at the warehouse? Trust Lily to think about that. I'd make new friends, and we could visit the old ones. Do you want to take the job, Daddy? That was the question, wasn't it? David thought about his pride, about feeling like he was taking advantage of a situation. But then he thought about Lily's worn-out shoes that he replaced every few months. The small apartment where she shared a room with him because they couldn't afford a 2-bedroom. The times he'd chosen between buying medicine and buying decent groceries. Yeah, he said softly. I think I do. Then you should do it. You always tell me to be brave and try new things. He hugged her tight. When did you get so smart? 2 weeks later, David started his new job. The first day was overwhelming. His office alone was bigger than his living room. He had an assistant. People called him Sir. It felt surreal. The security team he inherited was professional but cold. They looked at him skeptically, this outsider with no corporate experience. David didn't blame them. He'd be skeptical too. His second week, there was a situation. A minor break-in at one of the satellite offices. Nothing was stolen, probably just teenagers. But David's team wanted to call the police, file reports, make it a big thing. David went to the office himself, looked around, and found what he suspected. The lock had been picked, but nothing was disturbed except some food from the break room. He checked the security footage and saw 3 kids, maybe 15 years old, looking hungry and scared. We're not calling the cops, David told his team. Sir, protocol says. I know what protocol says. These are hungry kids, not criminals. We're going to install better locks and stock the community food bank 2 blocks from here. Those kids need help, not arrest records. Word of his decision spread. Some people thought he was soft. Others started to see him differently, as someone who understood that security wasn't just about locks and cameras. It was about people. Richard called him into his office that Friday. I heard about how you handled the break-in situation. David tensed, ready to defend his decision. That was exactly right, Richard said, surprising him. You saw people, not problems. That's what I meant when I said you were different. Over the next few weeks, David settled into his role. He still felt like an imposter sometimes, wearing suits and attending meetings. But he was good at the job. He understood people, understood risk, understood how to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. His relationship with Richard evolved too. They started having lunch together once a week. Conversations about work drifted into conversations about being fathers, about loss, about fear. I don't know how to talk to Sophia anymore, Richard admitted one day over sandwiches. It's like we speak different languages. Kids that age are tough, David said. But they want to know you care, show up, even when it's awkward. Like you do with Lily? I try, I fail a lot. But I keep trying. Richard looked at him with something like envy. You make it look easy. It's not. Every day I wonder if I'm screwing her up. If she needs a mother figure. If I'm enough. You're enough, Richard said firmly. Trust me, you're more than enough. Meanwhile, David and Lily's life transformed. They moved into a small house with a yard. Lily got her own room, which she decorated with posters and stuffed animals. David could buy groceries without calculating every penny. He could say yes when Lily asked for things within reason. But the best part? He could be present. His new job had better hours, more flexibility. He made it to every school event, every parent-teacher conference. He was there. 1 month after starting his job, David received a note from Richard. Just 3 words, meet Sophia. Tomorrow? David stared at the note. He'd saved her life, but they'd never actually met. Never spoken. Tomorrow, apparently, that would change. And somehow David knew that meeting would change everything again. David arrived at Richard's house for the first time on a Saturday afternoon. House wasn't the right word. Mansion, maybe. Estate. The kind of place that had a gate and an intercom and a driveway longer than David's old street. A housekeeper let him in and led him through rooms that belonged in magazines. Everything was perfect, expensive, and somehow cold. Like a museum instead of a home. Richard was waiting in what he called the sitting room. Beside him stood a teenage girl with dark circles under her eyes and her arms crossed defensively. Sophia. David, this is my daughter, Richard said, his voice careful. Sophia, this is the man who saved your life. Sophia's eyes flicked to David, then away. Hi, just that. One word, flat and emotionless. Hi, David replied. It's good to see you doing better. Is it? Sophia's voice had an edge. You don't know me. Richard winced. Sophia, please. It's okay. David interrupted. He understood defiance. Understood that sometimes attitude was armor. You're right, I don't know you. I just know that day in the park you needed help. I didn't ask for your help. Nobody asks for help when they're unconscious. Sophia's jaw tightened, but she didn't have a comeback for that. After a few more uncomfortable minutes of attempted conversation, she excused herself and disappeared upstairs. Richard looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. She's been like this since she came home. Angry at everything. She's angry at herself, David said. The rest of us are just easier targets. How do I get through to her? David thought about Lily, about the time she'd pushed him away when she was sad about her mom. You keep showing up, even when she pushes you away, especially then. Over the next few weeks, David settled into his job. The security team stopped looking at him like an outsider. He implemented new protocols, updated systems, and handled a dozen small crises that nobody outside his department ever knew about. That was the point of good security, invisible until you needed it. His lunches with Richard became regular. More than boss and employee, they were becoming friends. Richard talked about his struggles with Sophia, and David shared his own parenting fears. Two men from completely different worlds, connected by fatherhood. One Thursday, David had to work late. The company was hosting a major investor event and security needed to be tight. He called Lily to tell her he'd be home late, and she sounded disappointed but understanding. Can I come with you? She asked. I promise I'll be good. David hesitated. The office on a normal day was one thing, but during an event? Then again, what was she going to do, steal corporate secrets? She was 7. Okay, but you have to stay in my office. Deal? Deal. He picked her up from the neighbor who usually watched her after school. Lily was thrilled, dressed in her favorite purple dress because she wanted to look fancy for Daddy's work. At the office, David got her set up in his space with coloring books and snacks. She was perfectly content. But around 6 o'clock, Lily said she needed to use the bathroom. Down the hall, 3rd door on the right, David told her, pointing. Come right back. I will. 10 minutes later, she wasn't back. David's security training kicked in. The office was secure, but still. He left his post and went looking. He found her in the break room, but she wasn't alone. Sophia was there, sitting on the counter with a soda, looking surprised. Sorry, David said quickly. Lily, I told you to come right back. But I met a friend, Lily said brightly. Her name is Sophie. Sophia looked uncomfortable, like she'd been caught somewhere she shouldn't be. I was just getting a drink. Your daughter started talking to me. She talks to everyone, David said with a slight smile. I told her about my school play, Lily continued, oblivious to the tension. And about how Mommy is in heaven now. Do you have a mommy? The blunt question made Sophia flinch. Yeah, but she left when I was little. So kind of the same thing, I guess. That's sad, Lily said with the simple honesty only kids could manage. But at least you have your daddy. My daddy is the best daddy in the world. He reads to me every night and makes me pancakes on Sundays, and he never forgets to help with homework even when he's super tired. Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Really? Uh-huh. One time he worked all day and still stayed up to help me build a volcano for science class. It was really cool. It exploded and everything. David felt awkward standing there while his daughter unknowingly bragged about him. But he couldn't interrupt. Something was happening. Your dad sounds nice, Sophia said quietly. He is. He saved your life, you know. He's a hero. Okay, Lily, David said, stepping in. Let's let Sophie get back to whatever she was doing. But Sophia hopped off the counter. Wait, can I ask you something? Sure, David said. Why did you help me? In the park. You didn't know me. You didn't know my dad was rich or anything. So why? David knelt down so he was at her level, same as he did with Lily. Because you're someone's daughter. And I couldn't stand there and watch someone's daughter die, simple as that. Sophia's eyes got wet. That's it? Just because? Just because. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. Most people want something. Everyone wants something from my dad. I don't want anything from your dad. He's been good to me, gave me this job, but that came after. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Thank you. I never said that. Thank you for saving me. You're welcome. After that day, something changed. Sophia started showing up at the office more often. At first, David thought she was there to see her father, but she'd often end up in his office talking to him or playing with Lily when she was there. Richard noticed. I don't know what you did, but Sophia actually talks to me now. She even had dinner with me last night, voluntarily. I didn't do anything special. You treat her like a person, not a problem to fix. That's more special than you think. The three of them, Richard, David, and Sophia, started having lunch together. It was awkward at first. Sophia was quiet, defensive, watching them both carefully. But gradually she opened up. One day, she asked David about his wife. What was she like? David pulled out his wallet and showed her a picture. Kind, funny. She made everything better just by being in the room. Lily has her smile. Do you miss her? Every day. But I've got Lily, and she keeps me going. Kids have a way of doing that. My dad barely knows me, Sophia said, then immediately looked guilty. Sorry, that's not fair. It's honest, Richard said, his voice heavy. You're right, I haven't been there. But I'm trying to change that. Why now? Sophia challenged. Because I almost died? Yes, Richard said simply. Because I almost lost you and realized I'd already lost you. I don't want to lose any more time. Sophia looked away, but David saw her fighting tears. Over the following weeks, David watched father and daughter slowly rebuild their relationship. It wasn't smooth. There were arguments, slammed doors, cold silences. But Richard kept showing up, kept trying, and gradually Sophia started letting him in. David became an unexpected bridge between them. When Sophia was too angry to talk to her father, she'd talk to David. He'd listen, then gently suggest maybe her dad was trying his best. When Richard was frustrated and ready to give up, David reminded him that rebuilding trust took time, and Lily, sweet Lily, became friends with Sophia. They were 10 years apart, completely different worlds, but somehow it worked. Sophia would take her to museums and concerts, things David couldn't afford even with his new salary. She'd help Lily with homework and listen to her endless chatter about school. Why do you spend so much time with my daughter? David asked Sophia one day. She thought about it. She's real. She doesn't want anything from me. She just likes me. Do you know how rare that is? David understood. In Sophia's world of wealth and privilege, genuine connection was probably hard to find. One Saturday, Sophia invited Lily to a concert. David was hesitant, but Richard assured him his security team would be there. It would be safe. When they came home, Lily was bouncing with excitement. Daddy, it was so amazing, and Sophie bought me a t-shirt, and we had ice cream. Sophia stood in the doorway, smiling. A real smile, not the fake ones David had seen in the beginning. She was great, didn't stop talking the whole time. That sounds about right, David laughed. After Lily ran to her room to put away her treasures, Sophia lingered. Thank you, she said. For what? For letting me be part of her life. Part of your life. It means more than you know. You're part of this weird little family we're building, David said. That's just how it is now. But life had a way of testing people just when things started getting good, and the test was coming, though none of them knew it yet. It started with a phone call. Richard's assistant, Patricia, caught David in the hallway looking worried. We have a problem, she said quietly. Corporate espionage. Someone's been leaking confidential information to our competitors. David felt his security instincts kick in. What kind of information? Product development, financial data, strategic plans, serious stuff. The board is panicking. Does Richard know? He knows. He's in emergency meetings all day. This could be really bad, David. It was bad. Over the next few days, the extent of the breach became clear. Someone with inside access had been systematically stealing information for months. The company's stock dropped. Board members demanded answers. Competitors were using their stolen data to undercut them on deals. Richard looked 10 years older. The stress was eating him alive, and worse, he was pulling away from Sophia again, back to his old patterns of working 20-hour days. David found Sophia in the break room one evening looking upset. "He's doing it again," she said. "Choosing work over me. He's trying to save the company. He's always trying to save something, it's never me. That's not fair, Sophia. This is a crisis." "My crisis wasn't a crisis." Her voice broke. "When I was dying in that park?" David sat down beside her. "You're right. But he's learned from that. He's different now. This situation is temporary. You don't know that." "No, I don't. But I know your dad loves you, and I know he's terrified of losing you again. Sometimes fear makes people do stupid things like work themselves to death trying to prove they can protect everything." Sophia wiped her eyes. "I just want my dad." "Then tell him that." "Not me, him." That night, Sophia went to her father's office. David didn't know what was said, but the next morning Richard looked different. Lighter somehow. "She told me she needed me," Richard said during their lunch. "Not my money, not my company. Just me, and she's right. What's the point of saving the company if I lose my daughter? So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to be present, and I'm going to trust you to handle the security crisis while I remember how to be a father." It was exactly what David needed to hear, because he had a plan to catch whoever was stealing from the company, and he needed Richard's trust to make it work. David worked 18-hour days for the next 2 weeks. His security team ran background checks, monitored network activity, and investigated every employee with access to sensitive information. The leak had to be stopped before the company hemorrhaged any more data. He barely saw Lily. Their neighbor, Mrs. Anderson, had become her primary caretaker again, and David hated it. This was exactly what he'd left the warehouse to avoid, working so much that he missed his daughter's life. On Wednesday evening, he came home to find Lily asleep on the couch, homework scattered around her. A note from Mrs. Anderson said she'd fed her dinner and helped with math. David felt like the worst father in the world. The next morning, Lily was quiet at breakfast. She pushed her cereal around the bowl without eating. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" David asked. "Nothing." "Lily." She looked up with those big eyes that saw everything. "Are you going to start working all the time like you used to? Before the new job?" His heart broke. "No, baby. This is just temporary. There's a problem at work, but once it's fixed, that's what you always say." "I know, and I'm sorry, but I promise as soon as this is over, we'll do something special. Just you and me. Promise?" "Promise." But promises were hard to keep when the crisis got worse. That afternoon, David's team discovered that the leak was still active. Whoever was stealing information was getting bolder, accessing more sensitive files. And then David caught a break. His network security specialist, a sharp young woman named Kelly, found an unusual pattern. "Look at this," she said, pulling up logs on her computer. "These access times. They're all after hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Always from Terminal 7 on the executive floor. Who has access to that terminal?" Kelly pulled up the list. Only 5 people had the security clearance. 4 were longtime employees David had already cleared. The 5th name made his stomach drop. Brett Harrison, Richard's right-hand man. His most trusted advisor for 15 years. "It can't be," David said. But the evidence was there. Every leak corresponded with Brett's access times. The files stolen were exactly the ones Brett would know about. David had to tell Richard. This wasn't just corporate espionage anymore. This was personal betrayal. He found Richard in his office, trying to leave early for once to have dinner with Sophia. "We need to talk," David said, closing the door. 20 minutes later, Richard sat in stunned silence. "Brett, you're sure?" "The evidence is clear." "I'm sorry, Richard." 15 years. Richard's voice was hollow. "He's been with me since the beginning. I trusted him with everything. I know. Have you confronted him? No, I wanted to tell you first. We need to decide how to handle this, quietly or publicly. Richard looked older than David had ever seen him. Another betrayal. Another person he'd trusted who let him down. We do it right. Document everything, build an airtight case, then hand it to the police. I won't sweep this under the rug. The next 2 days were intense. David's team gathered every piece of evidence, building a case that would hold up in court. They looped in the company lawyers and prepared for the fallout. On Friday afternoon, with police present, David and Richard confronted Brett in a conference room. Brett denied everything at first. Then he got angry. You brought him in to watch me? He shouted, pointing at David. Some warehouse worker playing security guard? He saved my daughter's life, Richard said quietly. And now he saved my company, which is more than you've done. I helped build this company, and then you tried to destroy it. Why, Brett? The money? Was that it? Brett's face twisted. You changed, Richard. After your daughter's incident, you went soft. Started talking about values and work-life balance. This company was built on ambition, on being ruthless. You lost that. No, Richard said. I found something more important. Brett was arrested that evening. The story hit the news the next morning. Montgomery Technology's board of directors met in emergency session. Some wanted Richard to step down, saying his judgment was compromised. Others supported him. Richard stood before the board and gave the speech of his life. David watched from the back of the room. Yes, someone I trusted betrayed me, Richard said. But that same trust allowed me to hire David Chen, who uncovered the betrayal and saved this company. I made mistakes. I let ambition cloud my judgment, not just with Brett, but with my own daughter. I almost lost her because I was so focused on this company that I forgot what mattered. He paused, looking around the room. Some of you think I've gone soft. Maybe you're right. But this company was built to make people's lives better. And that starts with our own lives. I'm not going to run an organization that destroys families, including my own. If that's not the kind of company you want, then find a new CEO. The room was silent. Then one board member started clapping. Then another. The vote was overwhelming. Richard stayed, but the victory felt hollow. That night, David finally made it home before 8 o'clock, expecting to celebrate with Lily. Instead, Mrs. Anderson met him at the door looking worried. David, Lily's not feeling well. She's been in her room all afternoon. Won't eat dinner. David rushed upstairs. Lily was curled up in bed, her face flushed with fever. Hey, sweetheart, he said softly, sitting beside her. Daddy. Her voice was small. I don't feel good. He felt her forehead. Too hot, way too hot. Let's get you to the doctor. At the emergency room, tests showed Lily had a serious infection. They admitted her for observation and IV antibiotics. David sat by her bed all night, holding her hand, watching her sleep. All the company drama, all the corporate espionage, none of it mattered. This was his whole world right here, this little girl fighting an infection. Around 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. Richard calling. Hey, David answered quietly. I heard. Mrs. Anderson told Patricia, who told me. How is she? Sick, they're monitoring her. Do you need anything? No, we're okay. David, I'm sorry. You've been working yourself to death on my problems, and now, this isn't your fault. Still, family comes first. Always. You taught me that. After they hung up, David thought about that. Family comes first. He'd been so focused on solving Richard's crisis that he'd neglected his own daughter. The exact thing he'd promised not to do. Lily woke up around dawn, groggy but lucid. Daddy, you stayed. Of course I stayed. You didn't go to work? You're more important than work. Always. She smiled weakly. You promise? I promise. And I'm sorry, baby. I've been working too much again. That's going to change. It's okay. You were helping Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard can wait. You can't. By Saturday afternoon, Lily's fever broke. The antibiotics were working. She'd be okay. David felt like he could breathe again. That evening, Sophia showed up at the hospital. She had a stuffed bear and a stack of coloring books. For Lily, she said. Dad told me what happened. Is she okay? She's going to be fine. Sophia peeked into the room where Lily was sleeping. Can I sit with her? You look like you need a break. David hesitated, but Sophia was right. He needed coffee and food and maybe 10 minutes to close his eyes. Okay, but if she wakes up, I'll take care of her. I promise. When David came back 20 minutes later, Lily was awake and Sophia was reading to her from one of the coloring books, making up silly stories about the pictures. Lily was giggling. "Sophie's the best," Lily announced. "She does funny voices." David watched them together. This teenage girl who'd almost died 6 months ago, now bringing joy to his daughter. This was what saving someone really meant. Not just keeping them alive, but watching them learn to live again. Richard came by that evening after visiting hours, but David walked him in anyway. He stood at the foot of Lily's bed looking uncomfortable. "How are you feeling, Lily?" he asked. "Better. Sophie read me stories." "That's good." He turned to David. "The board approved emergency family leave for all employees. Paid. As much as they need. Starting with you. Richard, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You saved my company. Now go save your peace of mind. Take the time. Be with Lily." After Richard left, Sophia stayed a while longer. She and David sat in the uncomfortable hospital chairs watching Lily sleep. "She's lucky to have you," Sophia said quietly. "I'm lucky to have her. My dad's different now, because of you. He's different because of you, because he almost lost you and realized what mattered." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what happened. In the park. I was in a really dark place, you know? I didn't care if I lived or died, David.